What are some of the elements, the habits, that go into a great segment, that great booking? I mean, what would you say the tools in the toolkit would be if you could isolate any qualities of what makes a really talented, segment producer or senior producer or booker? I mean, what are those?
I think you really have to be aggressive. You don't want to annoy people. But I think you really have to be persistent on the email. It's not just one email. It might be a back and forth. It might be tracking them down. Sometimes we'll have guests who, don't do that much media anymore. I have to go looking on the internet. Sometimes I have to go. Facebook has become so much more helpful than just because some people are just on Facebook and then they're not represented by anyone anymore. I think you just have to be really persistent and be willing to do the back and forth in getting them.
Yeah, I think that's very important. It's also knowing, like as I said, I came from publicity, and I think it helps knowing what's in it. What's in it for them.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
And being able to offer a forum or some. Here's what we want. Here's what we can offer you. Larry King was offered like, here's a place to tell your story in an unvarnished way without judgment. With Joy Behar, a lot of the times it's a chance to show off different sides of your persona, sense of humor, knowledge about issues outside of show business, which is a lot of actors want to show their range these days. So it's being able to read people, to try to figure out what's in it for them.
Interesting.
I would probably say, in addition to that, probably research. Like really know your guests and who you're booking. And when you're talking about the great guest, like you can have an average guest, and I mean, we want all of our guests, but some are bigger than others. So you can have an average guest, but if you really do the research and you really find like what's going to be that interesting thing that they're going to want to talk about, what's that little fact that maybe nobody remembers about the person, like 10 years ago that they dated so-and-so or they worked at such and such a place. And you can really turn an average guest into a great segment if you do your research.
Interesting.
And I would also say, sort of following up on that having something new come out of it is obviously ideal. And so when you do a lot of research, it's really important to know what your colleagues are doing and your peers. So with guests that have been on other shows, it's very important to know what's been said and what's new. And if you're able to get something new out of that guest, then you've obviously done the right amount of research, and that's an exclusive essentially. So.
Well, that's a good segue. Let me ask you guys about exclusivity. It's something that you've kind of spoken to in various ways. Has it changed a little bit? Are you still laser focused on it? Is this like what you're sort of getting paid to do, is to deliver exclusives, or is that sort of an antiquated notion in today's news environment?
I will say the concept of an exclusive today is so watered down because everyone labels everything an exclusive. You will see their newest technique is now like, an interview with a big newsmaker might happen on CNN and MSNBC, but one might be on in the morning and one might be on at the night. So they'll call it a cable prime time exclusive. In other words, it's not on, one thing was on in the morning, this is just at night. Or an 8 p.m. hour exclusive, which means it's just, it could be on the other network in 1 hour. Radio in general does not have to worry about exclusives as much, just because we don't get them. It's just a reality. If there's a big newsmaker and they want to say something big, for the most part, they're going to go to Matt Lauer, they're going to go to Diane Sawyer, they're going to go to Joy Behar or Wendy Williams. It's just a reality. or Bud Mishkin. I don't know the sports world, so I know it's newsmaking too. But
I'm joking. No, it's interesting. But would you guys agree with that general assessment that exclusives are? I mean, my pet peeve is breaking news. I've had about enough of the breaking news. They got me the first 10 times, like, oh, breaking news, and now I'm over it. But I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are.
Well, like Wendy Williams she's such a unique hostess
Yeah.
that somebody that's on another show, if she comes to the Wendy Williams show, for some reason the interview is just completely different.
It's just fresher.
You know, we don't want to have somebody on the show that's, you know, been on everywhere, you know, all the morning shows and then all the daytime shows. So we do kind of set a limit. We kind of ask, you know, how many shows are you doing? But if it's really somebody that Wendy is excited to talk to or wants on the show, you know, we'll find a way to make it that, you know, that Wendy guest. But in regards to you saying like that you were, you know, waiting outside of a studio, I remember Sully when he landed the plane,
Yep.
you know, in Hudson.
Oh, sure.
I just remember the morning that like we knew he was in New York to be on one morning show. We didn't know like which one yet, but like everybody was like just scouring the hotels, like driving cars around all the morning shows, just like looking for this guy. Like, and that was the one that stands out that everybody wanted.
Yeah, that was a big day.
Everybody wanted that.
I had
kid.
to stand in front of when the plane crashed, I had to go down to the Hudson River and literally stand there and wait for people to be fished out of the water, basically.
Wow.
And there were so many producers standing at the Hudson, and the day was, if you remember the day, it was freezing. It was
Yeah.
like, it was
Bitter.
below like 30, you know, it's what it felt like. But there were a lot of producers waiting, but I remember somehow a Dateline producer got past the police line somehow. He must have known the cop, and Dateline ended up getting a lot of them, and the rest
So,
of us
but
were literally caught in the
Everybody
cold.
was. I was working for news at the time, Fox 5 at the time, and it was just like we were just trying to call around to like call the hotels to find out like where he was staying, and are you sure, and just like trying to find this man to get that get. So there's still those people out there that
And it's-
everybody's after.
And there's still shoe leather involved. I mean,
Yeah,
as much
yeah.
as we talk about technology, there's still that old-fashioned.
Well, because
ethic.
face-to-face, there's nothing that
Yeah.
beats face-to-face contact. I
Yeah.
mean, people use email a lot, and the people that work for me, I encourage them to pick up the phone and meet people, because having a relationship with somebody face-to-face or on the phone is really, because you do need that personal relationship. They need to hear in your voice or in your, you know, when they see you, that you're gonna take care of their client, that
Yeah.
you're just not out to make a name for yourself, that you want to get the truth out, but you also don't want to necessarily put somebody in an embarrassing spot.
And what about the reps? I know you mentioned your past career as a publicist, and now as a PR guy, I'm fascinated by this. Like, are there cases where you cultivate, you know, agents, lawyers, friends, spokespeople, PR people? Like, how often is that in the mix as you're going about your day-to-day? Is there a lot of attention to those relationships in general?
I would say it's a huge part of, I mean, at least for me, it's a huge part of it, because very rarely do I deal directly with the guest. So it's really sort of making the right impression on, you know, the guest's people or person. And then, as you were saying, sort of convincing that person that this is being done for the right reasons, and that it's going to be worth it. And, you know, there's a level of trust that needs to be developed. And if you can cultivate that, it's very useful not only for that particular time, but in the future. Because often, you know, publicists and you know, communications directors, they are, you know, they have their plates full. So it's not just like one person that they're dealing with. You might want somebody in the future, and that person again comes up. So yeah, it's a big piece of this.
I also find, yeah, I agree, and especially when you're dealing like with celebrities, you know, one person reps numerous celebrities. So, you know, you have a celebrity that has a great experience on, you know, your television show, and it gets passed down to all their other clients.
Yeah.
But if you have a celebrity that has a terrible experience on your show, that too gets passed down to all the other clients. So you really got to think about, it's a domino effect. If you don't have a good relationship with a rep, it's going to it will have a domino effect. So we really try to cultivate good relationships.
Sure.
I completely agree with that because I know over time, not on a regular basis, but there are times where you're dealing with a PR person, whether they're at a television network or a publicity firm, and you get pushback after you do an interview. I obviously can't say who it was, but there was a time where we had an interview and they didn't like how the interview went. And so then they like lashed out at us saying like we did not specify, you know, that we'd be talking about this topic in the interview. But I sent them back exactly what we had pitched to them, and it basically was, I saw no reason for them to push back except that they were just unhappy with how it turned out. But that is important because sometimes they rep a bunch of different people, so it can screw you in the future, you know, simply put.
And I would also say that there's sort of a fine line that you have to walk between, you know, being honest and sort of and being forward with a rep, and then actually, you know, breaking the relationship. Because, you know, for example, if you have something set up and then the interview gets pushed back and then it gets pushed back, I mean, to some extent, you know, I would understand that because, you know, so-and-so is busy or, you know, something came up. But at some point, it's like it's affecting my work and Bud's work, the host. So it's, you know, at some point, you sort of have to find your place in the relationship and you know, sort of be honest, but also understand that this person holds the key to what you want. So, you know.